Okay, welcome everyone to our meetup. So today our goal is to, as always, answer any questions you have. So we'll make sure we save some time for Q&A. And we have a smaller group, so also if you have questions as I'm talking through things, feel free to, just raise your hand and we can, really address your questions in the moment. I want to make it as useful for you all as possible. And I do think we're going to end up with a smaller group today too, a little bit. I think a lot of people are traveling in summertime. So hopefully you can get a lot of your own questions answered today as well. And we're going to spend some time going back to basics. So if you're a long time PracticeVital person, this still, I think, will be really useful for you. If you're new, I think it'll be especially useful. And we're going to just kind of talk through some of the things I do when I first just log in. So I'm sort of thinking of this like when I go through your data with you in a strategy call. And this is by no means all the things that I look at, but it's just some of the things that I've come to do, mostly by just playing around with it. So I didn't always know what I was looking for, but when I would discover things that I wasn't expecting, it became part of my workflow to check on those things. So that will make a bit more sense in a minute here. So I'm going to share my screen, going through our demo account with you, and just want to be able to see all of you as well so I can see if you're asking things. Can everyone see my screen? Just nod your head if you can. Great. Okay. So when I first, the first thing I do when I log in is I often go to my practice dashboard and I'm always checking out my weekly bookings for the week. That's like the first thing my mind goes to because I want to make sure that we're growing or at least staying relatively consistent. And so I see that we have 260 sessions scheduled for this week. I also like to know how many intakes we have. And I have a general sense of what our average intakes are per week. So I see, okay, 10 this week, that's actually above usual, or for some practices, that would be way below usual. But click in there just to see kind of where you are. And I like to compare that number to my weekly average for the year. So this year so far, my weekly average is 238 sessions per week. And if I'm scheduled to have 260 this week, I also want to account for my cancel rate. So sometimes I'll do a quick calculation to figure out what the anticipated completed sessions will be, given that 15% of these 260 appointments will be canceled likely. So that gets me to around 219. I did it earlier, so I figured that out. Um, and so then I see, okay, that's a little bit lower than our average, but I'm also looking at kind of the big picture. And in June, we were above, previous months, so that's good. So we might have a lower dip, and it might be that some people are on vacation, but in general, we're close to where I want to be. Any questions about that so far? Making sense? Okay. So yeah, basically I just want to make sure that we are on track. I'm also looking at our rebooking rate and I'll have a general idea of like, okay, our rebook rate is usually about 85%. So then I know, are we below that? Are we kind of on track with that? So it looks like we're about where we usually are. And then I'm always just kind of taking a look at churn rate and retention, and we know that those don't change quickly, but I still like to keep tabs on them and see how they're looking. Um, Again, I like to see month by month how we're doing. And then sometimes I'll just take a quick glance at each location, or is there anything that stands out to me or anything that's surprising? Like here, I might go, okay, this person's onboarding and their retention looks low. Yikes, I want to really dive in and make sure that I help that clinician right away. One thing I noticed too is I like to look at this year and then I quickly take a look at last year because I want to compare these numbers to what last year's performance was so I know if we're trending up or down in general. So in 2025, I can see the churn rate was 11% and retention was 78%. That's more of what I'm used to. So if I see lower numbers this year, I want to investigate that a bit. The cancel rate's the same. And then I know how many completed sessions I had per year, and I know what the weekly average was. And last year it was 222, but this year it's 238. So I know that overall we're growing a bit, but I do see the churn and retention have gotten worse. So I want to dig into that a bit. And the best way to do that is to see it by provider. So then I'm always clicking into clinician metrics. I know I'm going quick here, but again, these are just ideas of some of the things that kind of stand out to me, some of the ways that you might go through your data. Sometimes I'll dive right into clinician metrics and I won't spend much time in the dashboard if I kind of know how things are going already. But every single week I'm in clinician metrics, actually every day. I don't know if you need to be every day, but I like to keep a pulse on everything because I'm almost never in my office and I very rarely work at my practice anymore. And so I really want to keep close tabs on the practice. And this is how I can do it. It's the only way I do it. I can't really see it if I log into our EHR. And so I have a good feeling about the practice. I can keep a pulse on it without being there. So now I'm in the clinician metrics and I'm going to go to the time frame of this year because we were just looking at this year's metrics on the dashboard. And so I want to stick with that time frame because churn rate really popped out at me as an issue. So I'm going to this year and you might want to do this along with me and see if anything stands out for you. And because I was interested in churn rate, I just clicked on it to organize lowest, or highest on down. So now I can see anyone who is in red here is somebody that I want who's on my radar. So I'm going to write down those names, or you don't even need to because you can explore further just within the tool. But I'm going to start with Mallory Murphy because her retention is at 80%. She is meeting her session goal. So a lot of times before PracticeVital, people might just say, Mallory's doing great. Her productivity's on track. And that's usually how we're operating in group practice. But now that we see this other data, I actually know that she's losing a lot of clients. Clients are slipping through the cracks. So she's not really contributing in the way that I once thought that she was. So I click into Mallory to learn a bit more. So now I'm on Mallory's dashboard. And the first thing that I always do is just kind of get the lay of the land. So I'm looking around, I'm seeing, okay, she is hitting her weekly productivity goal. So that's good. We see that's in green. Her rebook rate is 10% lower than most of the practice. So that makes sense given that her churn's a bit higher and that her retention is a lot lower because she's not rebooking people. And it's kind of chicken or the egg. Like, are people not rebooking because they've dropped out? Or is she not rebooking them and then they drop out because she's not doing that kind of administrative work? So it's probably a both and. Um, and I look at how many scheduled sessions she has. She has 16 and her goal was 18 per week. So it's a bit under where she should be. And that might be we're not rebooking enough people. So maybe she had actually better retention earlier in the year and now it's more of a problem. But I always look at the context. So I click on the little information bubble and I get the sample size. We're only talking about 5 clients included in the calculation. So this is not a huge number. For some practices, I see numbers like they had 30 new intakes this year. That's a lot. So sometimes I might even think, well, if Mallory only needed 5 new clients this whole year, her retention historically has been pretty good. So I could look back in time and see what it was last year. Way better. It was a lot better. So then I'm just going to do a little bit more digging. So this year, 80% churn, we know it's only 5 clients, but I'm going to click in and view those clients. So I did this just yesterday with Mallory on my team. We went through each of these clients one by one. And I just showed up with curiosity and supervision. And this is a demo example, but I have a clinician who had similar data in my practice, and we really did this yesterday. And we went through and I just said, let's figure out who is this client that you saw. For some of you, depending on your EHR, you can click on that little info bubble and click view appointment in the EHR, and it's going to take you right there. Some EHRs, we're not able to build that in that way. If that's the case for you, just have them look up in their EHR real easily. February 27th at 11 a.m., who did you see? That should take them 1 minute to get to that. Then I start with curiosity and I'm like, let's just figure out if there's anything in common that these four clients that didn't stick with you this year um, had in common. So we did this, and it's not always the case, but in this case, we did discover that all of these clients were older adult women. Now, what Mallory shared with me, she said, actually, in that case, I remember they said they wanted somebody who had kids, who could relate to that kind of life stage. She's like, I remember with this one, they said something similar, like, oh, you're younger than I expected. And she is young and she looks young. And so I think, what their experience with seeing her on the website didn't quite match with their experience in person. And so it's not always the case that you're going to find this like clear target of, wow, like three out of these four people all were looking for someone who might have a little more experience or have a little bit, like be a little bit older. But in this case, that was the case. So what I did next step was I asked my admin to follow up with these three clients. I just sent her the names of the clients and I said, you might not have realized this, but all of these were women who were looking for a little bit older therapist. Can you please reach out to them and um, see if they're interested in seeing Jenna on our team, who is a little bit older? So she did that, and we've already booked one of them with Jenna. So it's kind of cool because this is the kind of thing where maybe they're not directly telling the therapist, can you have the admin reach back out and schedule me with someone new? But because we did a little bit of digging, it was a very small part of our supervision session that we went over the data. We did a lot of other things. We did case consult, but this was really meaningful. It also helped Mallory discover a little bit more of who she might fit best with. And it helped our intake coordinator know that's just not going to be the best fit some of the time. Or, maybe we do more phone consults with Mallory and potential clients first so they can really get a sense of her. So that because otherwise we might lose these clients if they don't have a great experience. That's most of the time what's going to happen. They're not going to give us the feedback, I'd like to see someone else. They're just going to go find another practice or just say, it's not for me. So this is a good way to get those numbers up in terms of rebooking and in terms of reducing that churn rate. Any questions about any of this or comments? Pretty straightforward. Are any of you doing anything like this right now in your practice? Not yet. Maybe you will. Yeah, in supervision, I pull this up. Maybe not every single supervision, but if I see that somebody's lost a number of clients, I just go through the clients with them. Now, let's say that we didn't figure out, that it was a client fit issue. A lot of times what I discover is we go into the client, I see they had three appointments. Their last appointment was January 14th. And the clinician says, and we look at the chart and I see with them, and this is all over like Zoom, by the way. It's not like we're doing this in person. You can do it with them easily. We discover there's no chart note. The client's not closed out. The revenue wasn't collected. Like there's not any kind of termination status. And so this can also help with compliance and making sure that clients haven't slipped through the cracks or that there's any kind of liability issue. I did this recently with another therapist on my team and discovered there was no chart note kind of following where the client was going. Like they had a last appointment, there's a session note, and then nothing else. So what I tell my team is any client who doesn't have a next appointment in the books, we need some kind of chart note that says where that client is. Were they referred out? Did they decide to discontinue? Do you have an email where they said that? Because if we don't have that documented, that puts us all at risk. So sometimes that's the action taken by realizing that they don't have a next appointment. So zooming out a bit and kind of just going through some other reports here that I often go to. Um, our completed sessions report, I often come here to look at how full we are compared to our capacity and whether or not we might want to hire. If your utilization looks low practice-wide, so I'm in the completed sessions report if anyone wants to navigate there. And I'll go between total practice here. Now, this is how full are we as a practice. So I like to look month by month to see overall, with all of our clinicians put together, how full are we on average for a month? So in June, we were really full. We were actually past our capacity in terms of the goals that people have outlined. So, that might just mean that one or two therapists are actually at 27 sessions instead of 25. But it's a good indication that we're pretty full and that we might want to hire. I also like to look at this year to see month by month, is it pretty consistent that we're pretty full? If you're at about 85% or higher for recent months, then I would say that's a pretty good indication that you might be ready to hire. You also might want to pay attention to if you compare clinicians, and some might be really full, like exceeding their capacity and bringing that average up a little bit. So that's just one thing to pay attention to. And that could be a signal of burnout. It could be, that they're overly full. So it's also worth having a conversation sometimes, or maybe you bump up their goal a little bit so that you can have a clearer idea of when you're really full as a team. Something else that you might want to visit here is by location. So utilization, compare locations. It's really the same as the completed sessions by location, but this is really cool because if you know what your capacity is for your office space, like let's say we have room for 100 sessions um, per week in our office, then I can see, or let's say it's 200 because that fits better with this. So, um, oh, wait, no, sorry. Yeah, let's say it's 50. I'm trying to organize it for this example. So let's say you have capacity for 50 sessions in the office each week. And here we can see I'm comparing the locations and I'm going to last month and I'm doing it by week. And I can see like the week of June 22nd, there were 43 sessions that took place in office. There were two that took place via telehealth and 188 via video office, if you kind of have different ways of categorizing your sessions. I can see people following along, so cool. Um, the other thing is you can see it broken down by clinician. So I like to see how much time each clinician is spending in office compared to telehealth. Just gives you a good sense of like, what are our referrals asking for? Is our office space fully used? Okay, so I come here for this. I also come here to do my payroll. So for people who do a flat rate for payroll, if you don't know about this, this will save you a lot of time. Just show of hands, how many of you use a flat rate per hour, even if it's different per session type? Cool. So hopefully you all are using this. If you're not, I'll walk you through it real quick. Cool. So you can use the completed sessions report for payroll. That's honestly what I do, but some practices we've enabled something called time tracking. The only difference with this report is that for people who have things like supervision hours that they also want to count or admin hours, you would want to use our time tracking report because you can track those types of hours there. But if you don't, if it's all based on just completed sessions, then you can just use the completed sessions report. So that's what I use. And I just put in my payroll dates. So mine happen to be like every couple of weeks. So I just did it for July 1st to July 15th. I click apply. And then we've got the number of sessions completed for each clinician on the team. And if you come down here and click on the detailed view, you'll see the breakdown of how many of each type of session. So you can see I've already scaled my 90832 sessions to 0.5 of a session because it's a 30-minute session. Um, and so, whether or not some people already have that in their payroll system, like a 90832 is already counting a zero point 0.5, however you want to do it, but this will give you the full breakdown. You can also download it and upload it into Gusto if you use Gusto. So, um, this will cut down from several hours that it used to take me to take out the cancellations and see, oh, I want the cancellations that we charge for. I want to count that towards their payroll. Now you can see, like here, billable cancellation. Okay, there's one. So I'm going to put one in for them, or maybe it's just already factored into their full session count. Okay. Um, One more report I just want to kind of cover in terms of some of the things that I do, partly because some of them I just discover by either working with some of you and having answer, like people will ask me a question, like, how do I see how many intakes we have coming up? And then I'm like, oh, I don't usually do that, but let's find out. And so then just by playing around, you can usually find the answers that you're looking for. So I'm going to bring you to our appointments report on the left navigation. And you'll see appointments here under data sheets. And if I want to see how many intakes we have coming up, let's say this is just, again, just an example of one thing we can do. I'm going to keep it for all the clinicians of the practice, and I'm going to look for intake. So I'm going to click that intake. Um, and then I see all the 90791s because for us, that's our intake code. And right now I see 323 results because it's showing all different kinds of dates the last 12 months. So that's another thing. I get to find out we had 323 intakes in the last year. But I want to know what's upcoming. So I'm just going to put in dates that are from this week. Let's say, I think it was like, oh yeah, the 20th was this Monday. Um, what year are we? Oh yeah, and then I just want to go through August because I'm just curious what we have scheduled upcoming. So I click apply and I can see 24 results. So that means we have 24 that are scheduled in the coming, month and a half. I can see which clinicians are getting these intakes. I could click on the clinician and I can see, okay, Eugene has 3, James has 2, Kevin has 3. I want to know who's needing the most intakes. That might jump out at you if like, Pam needs 7 and isn't new, but other people needed fewer. The other thing I did just the other day, um, I looked at my appointments from the week before, and there was some reason that I did that. I can't remember what it was. And so I just put in the dates of last week. And when I was doing that, I discovered so I did the 13th to the 17th and I clicked apply and I just wanted to see sessions that took place. And in doing that, I found out that a clinician was billing a code that we really never bill for. And in that payroll period last time, I paid her for sessions at a higher rate than what we were reimbursed for that session. So we have that code listed in our EHR as a possible code, but I just didn't know that people were really using it. And so then it prompted me to make a new policy that if somebody's using that session type, that they're paid at a lower hourly rate than our standard. So then, I put out a new policy, but that's going to save me a lot of money because if they had used that code for the next year, I would have lost money without realizing it. So it might be just a spot check that you want to do on a weekly basis. Look at your last week's appointments that took place and just look at the spot check the billing codes. Make sure that they're billing codes that you actually want people using. Sometimes people are overusing certain codes. I've also discovered many times that in PracticeVital that a lot of clinicians aren't even using an intake code, which they could have reimbursed a lot higher than a regular session. So that's something else you'll discover by looking through some of this. You can also get a sense of the locations. So, a lot of video office here. How many in-office appointments have we had comparatively? So that was kind of a lot. Again, and we did a lot of that in less than 30 minutes, and I was explaining it as I went. So if you think about this as a weekly check or a daily check, it could take you about 5 minutes to do most of what I just did. And I promise you're going to spot some things, even if you don't know what you're looking for. If you play around in there, and I do it sometimes, I'll just be watching TV and I'm clicking around and I'll go, oh, this person's retention dropped significantly. Or, I wonder why so many clients are having one appointment with this therapist. Or, I'm realizing just by clicking through here, I'm going to click on billable cancellations and see what's happening and are we collecting revenue for all of it? So I might just check on our billable cancellations and see, oh, a lot of people aren't collecting the revenue for those sessions. Or maybe if a client has an outstanding balance from a missed appointment, I flag it for our admin to not allow that client to come for their next appointment until the balance is taken care of. Okay, so that's another thing you can do in here is just click on billable cancellations. Some of you have it coded in different ways. It might be a late cancel, it might be no show. If one thing doesn't show up, just play around until you find what you're looking for. And here I can see right away, okay, we had 4 of them last week. Here's the revenue, and it looks like we collected the right amount for all 4 of those late canceled appointments where there was a charge. So, but let's say one person hadn't, like, it wasn't collected, it would probably mean a failed credit card charge. And so then I would flag that for the admin, or the admin would be in here and check that. This is recorded too, so you can always come back and review if you kind of want to go step by step and like what are a few of those things that Tori walked us through. Um, and again, this is certainly not comprehensive. There's probably 50 more things you could do in each report, probably a lot of things that I'm not even doing that we always want to learn from each other. But just kind of going back to some of the basic functionality of each of these areas. Any questions that pertain to any of this?
I have a
Hi, Tori.
question.
Oh, go ahead, Victoria.
I posted this on Facebook, but I've really struggled of how to figure out my retention. If it's because I feel like it's higher than what it actually is. Well, I'm sure the numbers are right, but like for example, I have a therapist who's been with us, who's like very seasoned, high in demand. We don't even give her new clients because her
Yeah,
word of mouth is enough, right?
yeah.
And so but her retention shows is like one of our lowest retention. And I'm wondering if it's because she doesn't see people, like because she is so full, she doesn't see them weekly. She sees them every other week or every 3 weeks. Or but anyway, that's happening a lot in my office. And so the
Yeah.
therapists that, in my opinion, are maybe struggling look like really great therapists on our numbers.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
the ones that like her or me or other people are like, wow, those numbers really are crappy.
yeah. So
So
a great question. I think, sorry, did I cut you off? Anything
no,
else
you're
you
good.
wanted to ask? Okay. So there's a couple things with retention, and that can happen often. One time, so there's kind of two categories I'll talk about. One is sometimes the people we think are excellent in however many ways are struggling more than we realized. And it doesn't sound like that's the case here. So, we can talk about that separately. But a lot of times I will find that people had a hunch or they think that a clinician's really great. And I found this myself too, the numbers actually say otherwise. And that's real data and it's significant and it's means that we should coach and we just didn't know because we didn't have the numbers. So that's one category. The second is maybe what you're talking about, which is she's really great. I would go back in time and do a little digging. So let's say we go into Whitney, right? So 36% retention, that's not good. What's going on here? I'm going to look and I see she only saw 11 clients because she's had pretty good retention. She didn't need a lot of new clients. So that is important to note, right? Your understanding of she's stayed full with a lot of clients for a long time is noteworthy. The sample size matters. So if we only have 11 new clients, I'm already it's not that I'm dismissing this number, but it means that I might pay slightly less attention to it, or I'm not going to make it the only thing I know about this clinician. But I am going to look back in time and see, okay, in 2025, okay, yes, she did have great retention. So go back in time. If they've always had poor retention, then I would say it's more that first camp I was talking about where your gut instinct might not be right about what they're doing with clients. Just because they have some clients who have stayed for 200 sessions doesn't mean that the majority stay with them. So
Yeah.
that's important to note.
Yeah.
So
So
it,
like in
yeah,
her case, she has like this one has only had a few new intakes. And a lot of times those they've been like one-offs. So it's going to
yeah,
show it is maybe somebody who was just it's not even that she was bad, but they didn't want to she doesn't even have room to see them consistently. So it was more like a
yeah.
concept, just a
So
short.
that's really important too. Okay, so when somebody doesn't really have time to see them consistently, I take that as we might need to do something different than in our practice. That if somebody doesn't have a consistent opening for a new client, we probably don't want to give them that referral because if the client's going to drop out prematurely, then it's just a lost client and we haven't really helped them. So I've had people change some of their practices for the practice in terms of like, let's make sure we have a consistent opening weekly before we let this person even take on a new client because it might be better. The client's better served and the therapist is better off and the practice is better off if you don't lose that client altogether and you give that client to somebody else.
Mhm.
So that's one idea. If it's like a few clients that you've lost, I'd say just don't worry about it. Like if it's a few clients and you know how they're doing historically, like this clinician, then it might be more that I kind of use that curiosity like I described earlier, where I say, hey, we're just talking about 5 clients. No big deal. You've always had great retention, so I know you have the clinical skills. Like this isn't anything besides curiosity, but maybe we want to schedule those clients with other people. Maybe we gave you a different kinds of referral recently. Maybe our marketing is off, right? Maybe we're targeting people that aren't a good fit for our practice anymore. And so I want to know that. But you can still be curious. It's not an evaluation, it's not a judgment on them. It's just saying, let's work together. If you think it's kind of insignificant and you know why those clients didn't stick, let's say 3 of them were insurance issues or something, and the admin told you that, don't even bring it to them.
Yeah, I think my worry about it, I probably wouldn't bring it to them, but like our entire practice, except for maybe the ones that are having that, like from my perspective, we're having a hard time retaining them. Like I think the reason they have retained is the ones that they've kept, but we haven't really given them very many new ones because before the beginning of the year, like in these two cases, neither of them were retaining. So we were like, well, let's have you keep the clients that you have. We're trying to figure out who your really ideal client is. And so they haven't had a lot of new ones since then. And so they look like they've got like 60% retention, which is okay. but the rest of us don't. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, are we all, no one is doing well. I don't know. So I'm
Yeah.
a little bit worried that like maybe I am totally off base and don't know what I'm doing.
I
Maybe I
think
need some
so. It's all
therapy.
just information, and there's a few different areas we can look at. And I wrote a blog post recently about like, is this, if it's a practice-wide issue, let's say majority of people are struggling, then there might be data for the practice to take into account, right? If it's like one or two people, or a smaller group of people, then we might want to focus more on those clinicians. The other thing is there's different settings in terms of date range. Like if you see clients right out of the gates every other week, then we might change in your settings the expected number of days between sessions. So right here it's set to 10 days. Generally, I recommend about 10 days, even if you're expecting new clients to come every week, because it accounts for a couple of cancellations here and there. So again, if you go to your settings and you click on metrics and you want to make a change, you just click edit and see if that makes a difference. If you go in and you say, we actually expect 14 days between sessions. I think typically people don't expect new clients, or it's not best practice for new clients to come every other week because it's just really hard to gain momentum and it's more likely you're going to lose the client. So I don't think that should be the norm right out of the gates. But if you want to give more leeway, you can do that. It's just, and again, remember retention, we're just looking at new clients. We're not talking about every client that they've ever seen, unless you broaden the time frame. So if I go back to Whitney, my example here, and I want to know, like you said, with that clinician, how have they done it in the past? I could do since their start date. So I'm going to go back to March 1st, 2022, because, we're 2023 here. Um, we also pull in data since 2022. So if a clinician has been with you since then, you can do all of these dates and see their retention average as a whole. That's going to include every new intake that they've had during all those years, rather than zooming in on a more recent time frame.
Does it connect to like does it matter if what their first code was? Like, does it matter if it started with a consultation and then a 90791 and then a 90837? Like, does that matter? Or
Generally, yes. So if you have but real quick, before I answer that, I just want to point out, this clinician had a lower retention rate recently, but when I look at her average over the past 3 years with us, it's at 79%. So again, I'm not going to flag this to the clinician out, except for out of curiosity, hey, there's been a few new clients we've given to you, but I'm not saying overall her retention is low. Overall, it's very high. Um, Now I'm forgetting what you just asked. Is it going to, sorry, what was it again?
codes, I think I
Oh,
forgot
the
too, but
codes.
the codes.
Yes,
Yeah.
sorry. It all depends how your practice is set up. So for the majority of practices, we have an intake code triggers a relationship with a client. So a clinician does a 90791 or anything that you label as first appointment. And then from there, we say, okay, start retention with this clinician. There are exceptions with practices where they never used an intake code. It's typically a self-pay out-of-network practice where they just never set that up and they never did it. I recommend people do it regardless outside of PracticeVital because super bills and all these different things, and it's helpful to know intakes versus sessions. But let's say you didn't set it up. We've developed ways to work around that. And so in your settings or tuning call with Kevin or Brendan, that's something they go over. And if you aren't sure which one yours is based on, just schedule another call with Kevin, make sure you're straightened out, or send an email and he can tell you. I want to make sure I real quick review insights as well. But are there any other questions we didn't get to, Madeline? I want to make sure we also address questions.
I think we've covered off on everything in the chat. So
Okay.
if there's anyone that has a question from earlier that wants to come off mute, feel free to.
I have a question. Sorry, this is Malaya. I'm off screen just because I'm multitasking over here.
Yeah.
Just on that same note of the retention, So looking at all-time retention, I think that's in my head how my brain naturally wants to, like not
Yeah,
focus on a period of time where intakes occurred, because I think that
sure.
what drops it into the red zone more frequently for us, because we've had clinicians that have had therapists for years. What's the best way to do that? I know I was trying to follow
Yeah.
the screen.
Yeah, so you can do it for, if we want to see it for everybody. Let's say I
Hmm.
go into clinician metrics and I want to think of retention for everyone. I can do the table view because that helps me kind of see everything at once. And it just means I zoom out with the time frame. So I go January 1st of 2022, since that's Practice Vital's earliest import
Okay.
date. And I go up until the future, basically. And I click apply. So I put in January 1st, 2022, up till
All
today,
these.
click apply. And now you'll see retention rate update. And that's going to give you the retention overall for everyone, right? So you can see the numbers do look a lot better.
Yeah.
Um, the benefit of seeing more recent, maybe last 12 months, is you can see trends. Like sometimes it drops significantly, or we as a practice are losing more clients recently, and we want to kind of investigate what's going on. But absolutely, this is also a way to do retention, is to think about it for the full time that a therapist has been at your practice. And if you
Mhm.
do any kind of bonus or something off of that, maybe that's what you want to really look at in terms of their full retention rate. Like Victoria, maybe when you're sharing the metric with them, they're given a number based on their full tenure at the practice. And that's going to include all their longtime clients. So you know that those people who have been there for 100 sessions, they're included in there.
Otherwise, it's only based again on a period of time prior to what you're searching, correct? It's only intakes during a specific.
Yeah, yeah. So if I just did last 12 months, it's going to be intakes who came in the past 12 months. So we're zooming in on that period of time.
Got it.
Hmm. And typically, if you're looking at this year only, it will look a little bit lower. And that's often because clients are coming in frequently. Maybe it's still taking them more time to be retained, but that's also data too.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Gosh, sorry, I didn't know my video was off. Has it been off this whole time? Sorry.
For a little while.
Oh, that's so strange. Okay.
And just remember, Malia, the retention rate is going to exclude anyone who started too recently. So even though we're looking at, this year or last 12 months, it's all intakes in that period, except for those that started too recently and haven't had a chance to reach that retention threshold.
That makes sense. And our practice, we actually hold it to 12 sessions. So ours is always a little harder for people to hit. But like I said, then we have clients that have been here for years. So
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. And sometimes, another way to look at retention, because we can look at the percent of clients that we retain, but we can also look at the retention report to see the average number of sessions that per client with each therapist. That's sort of a different view of retention because, um, you can get a sense of kind of the length of time. And those people who stay for 200 sessions with one therapist are going to bring this number up quite a bit. So now I can see, okay, Jocelyn really keeps people on average for 23 sessions, and Mallory keeps people for 7 sessions. So that's a big difference. That might tell me which type of referrals I give them. Um, it is going to be brought down a little bit if Mallory's a newer therapist. She just doesn't have clients who have stayed for 200 sessions yet because she started 6 months ago. So just take that into account as well. And you can always click in and view the clients.
I just wanted to add really quickly. So I just went and checked my report and I'd done all the other things that you'd suggested except for the time one. So I went back and started it from the beginning of time.
Yeah.
Practice Vital anyways. And now that's what made the biggest difference is actually. So now they're all like maybe not great, but we're all at 50% or more, which is more acceptable than 20%.
Yeah, yeah. So what that tells me though is that clients are probably coming pretty infrequently when they start at your practice.
Yeah, I think that what you
So
said
that might
about
be
them
something to
doing
change.
Yeah, that's actually exactly where we were going already. So yeah, we started,
Right.
most of our clients do like every other week because, financial stuff, they always share that. But our
Yeah,
new selling point is like, let's just get you like maybe 8 sessions first, like
up
weekly for
front.
8 sessions. And then
Yeah.
after that, we'll move to an every other week and see how it feels. Anyway, so that's what we've been working on this summer. But yes, so thanks for that feedback.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's kind of the beauty of Practice Vital is it's not all this therapist is doing something wrong. Like that's not the intention. It's let's get curious and kind of put some pieces together. And if we discover there's a big change and, what policy could we change to make everyone more successful? It's also easier to have a smaller caseload and not have 100 clients coming every other week right out of the gates. And it's just not best practice in terms of their outcomes or client care. So that's why it's really helpful to kind of have this message that you share with clients about the cadence and frequency that's going to help them be most successful and is also going to help the practice. So real quick, I want to go into our insights for those who haven't. Just show of hands, how many of you have explored the insights so far? Few of you, not everybody. Okay, cool. So on your left navigation, you'll see insights and it will say new. And we just rolled this out on Monday or Tuesday. So this is very new to all of you. The idea in here is that it's sort of like as if you have another leader or a coach in your practice telling you, here's what to focus on. Here's things that need attention in your practice. So that if you don't have time or you don't quite know how to kind of comb through the dashboard or the clinician metrics, you can come here each day and it will be updated every day as your normal data is. And you'll find things to focus on. So if you don't know how to do anything else that we just did, you can come here and see, like what's impacting my practice? Rebook rate alert. So let's click here and we can see there are 3 clinicians below the 85% rebooking rate target. So it kind of tells you already we want clinicians to rebook about 85% or more. There are 3 people on our team who have lower than that. And here's how much below the target they are. So now I know exactly who to uh, follow up with, maybe have a conversation with in supervision, and to look into the client's data sheet and to see which of their clients are not rebooked. Because if we can get those clients in, we're going to improve our retention and client engagement. So below the information that you see, we give you a chart that looks at the clinicians who are lower, and then you can see everybody's rebook rate in the practice. If you have a huge practice, it might cut down to like the bottom 10 or something like that, or 15. Because some practices with 200 clinicians, our charts won't show everything. So just be mindful of that. And then below, we give you some tips. So right in here, it says like, how can I talk to clinicians about rebooking? So you don't have to figure all those things out yourself. And then we have a recommended reading. So why therapists struggle with rebooking. Click on that and you see an article I wrote about specifically how therapists can improve rebooking. You might copy this link and share it with those 3 clinicians and just say, hey, I noticed that your rebooking is a little bit lower than usual. Here are some tips. The goal is 85%. You can log into your Practice Vital and take a look at where you're at. And, next time we meet, let's review some of these and see which of these strategies are working. So now you're providing them with really concrete tips. And even if, like, the smallest bit moving the needle is going to make an impact on your revenue and your client care, all of these things, let's say one clinician rebooks 2 more clients because of it, it's going to make a really big difference. So you don't have to focus on everything. Just do one small thing when you have time for it, but this should make it really easy to kind of know exactly what to do. So we have a bunch of these insights. There's about 8 of them now, and we're going to keep adding to these over time. So if you have ideas for things like this that you're interested in seeing, um, this would be really helpful for me, please let us know. You can give us feedback, you can send us an email. We would love to hear your ideas because we are building these plans out. We have many more that are in the works, and we're excited about how this will help you. So kind of think of this as your own personal coach.
Tori, we have a quick question in chat specifically about client drop-off points. Would you
Yeah.
mind just maybe shedding some light on that insight in particular? It looks like specifically, is that number based on just this year or their entire time with the practice?
Yeah. So you can see where clients most often drop out of treatment. I think we're finding that for most practices, it's after session one, which kind of makes sense if you just think across all client journeys, but it also gives us good information about when we all want to follow up with clients, right? Like maybe we all create an automated process or a process where your admin follows up with every single client after their first appointment and asks how it went. So that's the most common termination point that I've seen in most practices. Um, and then, it gives you the number of journeys that we're looking at, and then you can see the the drop-off point that's kind of most common per clinician, where the drop-off point is most often. And I'm getting to your question in a second, just kind of orienting people to what's here. And so you can see, like, for this clinician, it's after 31 sessions, whereas for this clinician, it's after session seven. So that's a great coaching opportunity, or for supervisors to say, hey, this is where we often lose clients with you. How can we get them from session seven to session nine? And then here, most of our insights have a little section called Understanding the Data. So you can see here that this view only includes clients who have completed or ended treatment. So we're looking at people who we know have dropped out or they're not returning so that we can see that they've actually dropped off. And it's those who attended a session in the last 60 days are excluded. I'm trying to see if it says how many, or because I can't remember what we decided for each thing. Um, I don't know if it's in the last year. Does it say anywhere?
We can circle back with that one. Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll have to double check.
yeah,
Hmm. Great question.
yeah. I would guess we did it based on the last 12 months, excluding the most recent 2 months, but yeah, we can let you know. We have about 2 minutes left if there are any other burning questions, or feedback is always welcome too, if anyone has thoughts about this or anything else we went over. Anything else in the chat?
No, sounds like some great enthusiasm for the insight. So please, as Tori said, continue to, get curious and play around in there and share those thoughts and feedback with us.
All right. And our next meetup, Madeline, can you share that?
Sure, of course. Yeah, so August 27th, end of August. Nice sort of wrap up to the summer. Hope you all will join us again next month for that. Feel free to sign up for that in our resources page. We also have a little box you can check if you want to just automatically be added to all future monthly meetups now instead of signing up month to month. So keep an eye out for that. And we'll hope to see you then.
All right. Thanks for joining, everyone. We will send out the recording as well.
Thank
All right.
you.
Take care.
Take care.